What's going on, podcast listeners? My name is Michael Chernow. I am a restaurateur and lifestyle entrepreneur, and I am truly obsessed with living a life better than yesterday through wellness, fitness, and good vibes. I've always wondered if the drive to succeed is something we are born with, or if it's something that is made over time through grit, drive, and perseverance. I get to answer that question exactly, and the goal of this podcast is to talk with people that have absolutely crushed it in life and have inspired me to do the same. This is Born or Made. Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. Today I have an awesome guest. His name is Adam Bossie. He's not actually very bossy, but his last name is Bossie. He's an amazing dude. He is the co-founder and CEO of Afficianado Coffee Roasters. They make incredible coffee that I've had the pleasure of enjoying for the last few weeks upstate at my house. Adam is not this is not his first entrepreneurial venture. He really started doing some entrepreneurial endeavors when he was a young guy with car and boat detailing, which is very different than the world of coffee. And then he got into the world of finance, and he did a bunch of stuff in finance. And then, like lots of guys I know that are in finance, had a little bit of a light bulb moment and said, I don't know if this is fulfilling me. And so he stepped into the world of coffee, which I'm really, really excited to hear his story about. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome Adam Bossie to the show.
Michael, thank you for having me. How's it going?
I am so well, man. I'm so excited that you're here with us. And you know, really the idea here at Born or Made is I get to sit down with people like you to discuss the topic of nature nurture. Whether you think you were born with an innate ability to get to where you're at today, or if you think you were made over time through sheer grind, hustle and grit.
Sure.
And I don't want you to answer that question now, but what I'd like you to do is sort of give us a walkthrough. First, introduce yourself and really tell us who you are, probably better than I did, and then let's get your story, man. Let's go all the way back for as long as you can remember, and let's try to figure out if you were born or made.
Sure, absolutely. So, my current life where I'm at, I started Afficianado in 2008, and I had left my career in finance and really didn't have any structure or game plan to what I was doing. So I took some time. I was doing some consulting work, and I started roasting coffee on my mother's barbecue grill. We fabricated it out of some steel with my business partner, Paul Mercies, and we started selling coffee at farmers markets, and absolutely no business model whatsoever. We didn't know if we wanted to sell D2C at that time or wholesale. We didn't even know what wholesale looked like.
Can I stop you for a second, though?
Yeah.
Can you just tell us, how do you roast coffee on a barbecue?
Yeah, so my mother a few years prior had her floors done, and so we had this like nice terracotta tile, almost like a pizza stone. And so we lined the side of the grill with that, and then we took a Sunbeam turkey rotisserie, right, from like Home Depot, and then we fastened this cylinder to it, and we were roasting coffee. And it's funny, like years after, we found the bag stashed like up in our storage, and we ripped it open and had it, and it was disgusting. But so like these like trial and errors, and people are always like, how did you get to this point? And I still struggle till this day. We don't have a business model to reflect back to of how we got to where we are, what our purpose was, anything like that. And so from these farmers markets, we started picking up local chefs. And then one of the chefs that stumbled upon us was Chef David Burke, who is also a Middletown or Hazlitt, New Jersey guy. And, he really took us under his wing. And, at the time he had David Burke and Donatella. And we really started to have a lot of exposure in the city. And, we learned very early on, we never focused any money towards marketing until about 2-3 years ago. So we were able to make a lot of mistakes under the radar. And, we actually hit a point where La Colombe was really the only player in New York City at that time. It was either Illy or La Colombe, which just started hitting their stride. And they gave us a pretty hard hit where they're like, easy there, fella, like little kid on the block. And so we took that, and that's when we went from just roasting coffee like so many companies do because they love coffee to really trying to figure out what our purpose was. And I had went through some situations in my life at that time. I was engaged, that had ended, and I decided that, I needed to take some time for myself. I didn't know.
Wait a second. Can I just ask you real quick? When you say like you got a hit from La Colombe, what was that all about?
Well, when you're a small fish in a big pond like New York, and you have these companies that have immense amounts of money behind them, we've never taken on venture cap money. We never took any seed money from day one. It was always our money. I think my mother maybe threw like 15, 20 grand at us once, but outside of like small notes, like we never had a corporate structure. We never started. It's funny, my friends that come out of Columbia Business School today, they'll be like, I'm like, well, what are you working on? Where are you going to go work? And they're like, well, I have to think of a business plan, and then I got to work it back if it's feasible. I don't even know what that means. Like, I would never come up with a concept and walk it back. I'm going to do something that I love and personally connect with. And, you and I have spoken previously about properties and, different lifestyle retreats and stuff of that nature. It's something that I would love. And so I never took a business model and said, okay, I can make money doing this. Let's work it back. I always thought, pardon my French, the old saying, if you shovel shit good, you can make money doing it. And so for me, coffee was never really about coffee. I mean, I grew up, in an Italian household, Italian-French family. And, the focal points of everyday life was you start your day with coffee. And so it was something that I always remember as being memorable. And it was, I don't know what had happened. Like, it just somehow subconsciously, it segued me to the things that I really loved or would learn to love, which is traveling, community outreach, and agriculture. I grew up gardening with my father. Like, I was not the typical kid growing up. I realized at a very young age that I didn't connect with the normal household family where, the parents like, you're going to go to school and become a lawyer or a doctor. Like, my mother was always an entrepreneur. She didn't necessarily know how to articulate, Adam, how you're going to do it, but she's like, you're going to go to fucking college and you're going to figure it out.
What did she do? What like an entrepreneur? What?
Yeah, so my mother has had a strew of startups since, her younger days, but she made her living through my life in real estate. And so I get my drive, discipline from her. I would say more like regimen, getting into a regimen on a daily basis is really good. And I think that has also made me a little bit introverted just because I get so into what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis that I don't like being thrown off. And then from my father's side, my father really instilled this, he grew up in a upper middle class income, we didn't struggle, but my parents always wanted the best for us. And it was if they couldn't afford it, make it. And so when my parents moved across town, I grew up making RC cars with my father, and my father had this knack for painting, models and stuff like that. So he always was able to deliver on things that, maybe he wouldn't see the purpose of buying it, but actually making it. I wish I appreciated it more as a child. Of course, like, you never really know what you have at hand until later on. But then from there, my father got into woodworking, and when we moved into our new house, he built a little wood shop table right next to his. So my whole life, like, it was by his side. And so from that, I learned more of like the hands-on, if it doesn't exist or it's too expensive, make it. And so starting very early on, like, I've felt very comfortable fucking up. And like, it's okay, and it's to be expected. And I think the turning point for me was when I just started to get into like the normal, let's call it normal society, where like you hang out with your bros and like you're doing college life. And I thought, maybe, you know what, I transferred into school a year late because my father had passed away. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, you know what, maybe a good way of meeting people was joining a fraternity. And so I went through the whole pledge process. And everybody's like, oh, you have fucking great ideas. Like, people were like, we lived in this Victorian mansion that was dilapidated, needed a ton of work. And they kept on going through like all these plugs of like how to raise money. I'm like, no, fuck it. We're selling jelly shots. And like, we crushed it, like party after party. And then right before.
What was the first thing you sold in your life? Do you remember?
Yeah. First thing I sold was, so I went to this Catholic parochial school, and we had a carnival in July, and like I wanted to emulate like the carnival games, and so I used to do it in my basement. I used to invite all the kids over from the development and take their quarters, and so like I experienced what Flip Cup was before I knew what Flip Cup was. You know, like
how old were you?
Man, I was like 7 years old, and then from there, you know, I had a pretty interesting life. Everybody has their own story, but for me, my Aunt Carol had suggested to my mother when I was 14 to get this job at this French restaurant. And so like I grew up, like I said, in an Italian-American French family, and food was always a focal point. Coffee was a focal point. But then I went to this French restaurant, and these two brothers were flying in baguettes, you know, every other day from Paris. And I'm like, holy fuck, like I had this gastronomic experience at a very young age that most don't ever get to see. And so whereas, again, going back to people are taught like maybe to be a doctor or a lawyer or like the stereotypical things, I still remember from the age of 14 working there on and off through college, even though I started my other company when I was in high school. I remember this one fellow, Mr. Wolf, and him and his father developed the first hydraulic dentist chair. And him and his wife came in every Wednesday, every Saturday since they were engaged. The guy, unfortunately, has since passed on. And they would average probably like $800 for the two of them for twice a week at this restaurant. And he used to tell me he used to come outside and smoke cigarettes. I used to go back and forth between valeting there, food running, whatever they needed. And he would just say, what do you want to do? You know.
Let me ask you something. I see a lot of similarities, right? Like I feel like I hear my story and your story. What do you think it is? Like what at 7 years old you were you know, sort of simulating the carnival game experience in your basement. Like, can you recall, did anybody tell you to do that? What was the calling to do that?
No, I think at a very young age, you know, I think there were some personal things in my life. My parents got divorced when I was younger. I felt like I never really fit in, so like I kind of wanted to be different. And through that being different, I wound up doing things that kids at home were like, my parents would never let me do that. You know, my mom was the kind of parent that's like, you know what, you guys are going to go out and drink. You know, I'm not going to be that parent. I'm going to go buy you guys a 6-pack, hand over the keys, and like, you know, so, and I think it was, I think when it comes when you talk about self-starters or entrepreneurs, I think parents do at a young age play a very important role, and I think it's a support role. I think, you know, a parent needs to trust their kids. And, you know, if you're talking about entrepreneurs at a very young age, and for me, it was instilled into me. We won't get to your born or made point just yet, but I think you know where I'm going with this. You know, I had a lot of trust and support from my family at a very young age, and that allowed me to go out and feel okay with loss or, you know, failure.
See, it's so crazy because I actually had the exact opposite, right? I mean, I was also a young entrepreneur. I remember just wanting to sell like shit at a very young age. I mean, I've told the story before, but when I was a kid, I used to ask my older sister when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I was lucky because I lived in Manhattan, so like, you know, opening up a shop on the corner was easy because there's lots of people walking around.
Yeah.
But you know, like I remember asking my older sister when I was 5 or 6 years old to come downstairs, lay out a blanket on the sidewalk, and sell my toys with me. But you know, I did not have like crazy support from my parents. So I do think that there are obviously different pathways, but so I'm assuming that you were successful at whatever you put your mind to. I mean, and I don't mean like you didn't fail, but I mean like successful, like you kept on doing it. You didn't.
Well, I think the thing for me was there was the support there, but there was the back mindset that failure was not an option. Like my mother would give me that look that she's like, you're going to figure it out. And like in my heart, I'm like, I can't fucking fail, you know? And so, you know, whether it was the lemonade stand when I was younger, I tried that a few times. I think I also emulated a lot of things that my brother did. My brother and I have a 10-year age gap, but I remember my brother was always hustling. You know, like till this day, he's way more of a hustler than I am, super successful. There's things he does that it's just not in me. I don't.
What?
He goes for the, he wants to kill. Like, he wants the pot of gold at the end of it. He's a killer. And, I mean, so am I, but, like, me, like, I'd rather say, this is going to make me really happy for the next 5 years, as long as there's a little bit of a pot at the end of it. And I think it's like you just said, there's different ways of going about it. And my perspective is if you do something that you're really happy and you just keep your head straight, like don't pay attention to what everybody else is doing, you're going to make money at the end of the day doing it. And maybe not as much if you're as strategic with it, but fuck, it's been a lot of fun. And that's always been my perspective. I want very low stress in my life. And like when I am stressed, I mean, there's always stress when you're an entrepreneur, but like when it gets to an elevated point, it takes the fun out of it and it eats at my success rate. So
great segue into a question that I have for you. So you're a co-founder.
Sure.
And, I too am a co-founder in the meatball shop and in another business called Well. Let's talk about that happiness component, that level of happiness and partnership, because I think partnership is probably one of the most, if not the most challenging components of business from my experience.
Absolutely. Everybody's experience. Sure. So, I had this idea, and at the time when I started the coffee company, I had two friends that were coming out of school. One that had just lost his father. So we shared a lot of similarities in conversations. And, I knew for one thing, my business partner today, Paul, one partner's no longer with us. He left us a year into the game. But Paul was someone that I trusted just as much as I trust my family. And so for us, business partnerships are marriages, right? And you really need to, I think it's important to not have two identical people, because then you're just going head to head with each other. In my situation with Paul was very much comfortable being in the back seat, taking care of things when I was traveling, building the vision for the company, and just keeping things status quo. And so we complement each other really well. And, he's always that person that's there that I can call on. And he trusts me and I trust him. And I think ultimately that is the most important thing and probably the hardest thing. We have very different.
So are you you are the CEO of the company? Have you always been the CEO?
I am the CEO and majority stakeholder. Yes.
But from the beginning, you were the CEO.
Correct.
So it was very clear from the beginning that Bossie was the boss.
Yes, exactly. I was the one with the vision and the idea. So Paul had always had the operational understanding of, keeping things running smooth. Now, things have changed. The company's evolving, where there's different demands than there were. I mean, just COVID in and of itself, has completely changed businesses. So, we're reevaluating a lot of things in the way that we operate on a day-to-day basis. But it's still to this day, I still love the guy.
No, look, I say that because I believe in my heart of hearts that when you have a partnership, it doesn't matter what percentage of the business it does ultimately at the end of the day, but there has to be a single voice.
What I would say to that is we committed to each other one very simple thing from the beginning. You might call bullshit on this, and things do get murky from time to time. But the reality is, I've always said since day one as the founder, and I believe this, we try not, there's always going to be a hierarchy. If somebody says that there's not, they're completely full of shit. But there is no voice that goes without being heard at our organization, like down to the most junior level person. And if there is at any point someone that is better for a particular job than even myself, why wouldn't I give them the opportunity? And so Paul and I have committed to that very early on. And as a growing company grows, you start to hire people that are well suited for certain positions. So for me right now as the CEO, I'm the CEO, but if there's someone that's able to take my vision and carry it out, so, I could do what I do best for the company best, which is the vision and the forward thinking, then I'm okay with that. We're at the point where we're hiring a CFO, and that was something. Letting go of financials is really fucking hard, and so we're fortunate enough to bring in someone that I trust very much. It's actually one of my exes. Funny story on that, but we stayed really good friends, and she went on to do a lot of M&A acquisitions. She did the plated deal, and Not that we're going that route, but she is. I would rather have no one in my court than her to take us to the next step. So
I could not agree more with you. I think a great CEO really understands how to surround him or herself with people that are better than them so that they can actually focus on the things that brought them to the seat that they're in. What kind of advice can you give in the realm of, because it sounds like you have a happy, successful partnership. What kind of advice would you give for those out there that are either struggling in partnership or are looking to launch with specifically a friend, because that makes it real tough. And I'm sure there's things that you're not telling us, but
for better or for worse, I've always been an open book. And like I said, I have a great relationship with my business partner. So I'll tell you one of the backdrop stories and segueing into how we built our identity behind our company. So we started out as a coffee company just like everybody else. But we didn't know like what made us different. We knew what other successful coffee companies started out there and what they were doing. And, we have always had, I think this happens at any organization, when you're starting out, like you'll have employees that will say, we can't do this because we don't have this, or we don't have the resources, or, for whatever reason. So I set out, rather than copy people, to really travel and see the world, which I've always loved doing since I was in college, and really figure out, what the brand identity was going to be. And in the beginning, after my relationship ended, when I started traveling, I know firsthand that within my organization, there were internal struggles. And those internal struggles were, hey, where is the CEO of ours, like traveling? Like he communicates, but there comes a point where you start calling bullshit because you don't see things come to fruition. So it's like, I'm saying like, hey guys, I'm doing this, this, and this, but from the time you actually pull the trigger to make things happen and come to fruition, it might be a little bit of a delay. So there was like 2-3 years when I was really brainstorming, like, what is Afficianado? What is our purpose? What are we going after? We've never been one to like follow the trends. You're drinking our cold brew, but our team would yell at me saying like, Adam, we're missing out on so much money. And I'm like, you know what, let's pump the brakes. Let everybody rush to market. And then we'll come in with a really good fucking product when Whole Foods has a ton of shit on the shelves, and we're going to crush it because they're going to want to clean up and they're going to want 5 good products on their shelves. And that's exactly what we did. And through my travels through Africa and South America, rather than, putting up a report of paper with like who the farmer's name is and then me writing my signature and having the farmer write his signature, like companies that I won't mention do, there's no proving that. So I'm like, we're going to fucking video record everything. So I spent money on video recording equipment. Hey, why are we spending money on drones and stuff like this? This is frivolous. You need to be confident in your decision. And I do have a duty to my business partner to produce and to convey and communicate clearly. Sometimes that communication doesn't come on the other end the way that they want it delivered necessarily, but as long as you follow through and you're committed to it, communication is the most important thing. And if there's anything I could say, you can't beat it in enough. You can't have the same conversation sometimes in the beginning until that trust is there enough. And I think that's what really solidified it. So that went on for like 2 to 3 years, and now it's like, we're so ahead of the curve compared to the mid-sized roasters in the New York market that we don't follow anybody. And everything that we're doing is we're first at hand at doing it. So that respect and trust is there. And it's my duty now to keep it going.
What is the purpose now? What is the purpose of Afficionado?
Yeah, so our purpose has been to be the outlier in the coffee industry. We call bullshit. We're the whistleblower. There's a lot of coffee companies out there. We started our company. I went to school in Philadelphia. I remember La Colombe from its early days. We didn't jump on the coffee bandwagon. We were at the start, just after Stumptown and those guys. So we were before the curve. And our purpose today is really just to tell the story of the farms and tie it to ongoing evolution and sustainability. Now, people are like, all right, I've heard sustainability a million times. What does it mean? People brushstrokes things. They call things organic, sustainable. For us, we will never say we paid $2.50, $3 a pound for a coffee, and that's a 50-cent premium over what the next farmer, and not know what that 50 cents, that dollar contribution went to. So we've built strategic partnerships with each one of our origins. First off, we buy from the same farms every single year. We buy from them exclusively. We don't rotate with other roasters. So you'll never Google one of our farm names and seeing on another roaster. And if, our perfect example is our farm in Peru. Peter Turso, who's my head of research and development, he said it best on our last trip to Peru last year. We've been working with the native Quechua Indians there for 5 years. And we have on our Google share file, we have a folder of each year photos. And you see these natives. And the first year, there's no smile. They've never smiled a day in their lives. And then the second year, maybe they'll make eye contact with you. And then the third year, there's a little break of a smile. And the fifth year, it's they love seeing you and they welcome you in and they give you, it's like going to your grandmother's house and she pulls out all the best china and whatnot. And so it's amazing. And they all of a sudden they call all the villagers up and it's a huge festival for the time that you're there. And so I could put this on paper, but the best way to convey it is through video. And so our last time up there, we went with our counterpart, Jan Bernhardt, who's the largest organic banana producer in the world. And he's the one that built the inroads there for us and was our original translator. And we have a video of us negotiating our contracts with them for 5 years. So there's no bullshit on it. It is it's there and he's conveying the message to them and interpreting. And so there is full transparency in what we pay for pounds. There's full transparency in what our export costs are. There's full transparency in the extra money we reserve aside to give to that community, and we talk about what we do with it. So I never want to talk poor about any of our relationship farmers, but the reality is that there is a lack of education there. So if you give someone money that doesn't know what to do with it, they're going to do what they think is good with it. So in the case of our Quechuas, they would buy sugar or corn, nothing of nutritional value. So we send dietitians up there. We provide irrigation to their coffee trees for the regions that don't get good irrigation. All these different things that we build out by walking the farm each year and really being hands-on. Not like these other roasters go down on a class trip with 30 other roasters and they're the importers to the farmer, only put these 3 coffees on the table because that's what I bought from you. So it's a whole nother process in what we do. And for me, people always ask me, when you travel, is it pleasure or is it for work? And it's both. I love it. If I'm in Peru, I go to the farm, I love it, and go to Machu Picchu. If I'm in Africa, I do a few days on the safari and I do a few days on my farm. And it's full circle everything that I wanted in life. I always wanted off the beaten path. I hate when I was in finance, everybody wore a Rolex, everybody had a Range Rover, everybody had a house in the Hamptons, all great stuff. But to me, it was just kind of you're just on autopilot. And for me, being in dangerous situations sometimes, the fucking rush, that you get.
Dude, I gotta go with you, man. It sounds like such a fun trip.
Yeah.
So I've got another question. Sustainability is obviously a big buzzword today. I have a sustainable seafood restaurant. How much do you think, realistically, how much do you think the general consumer pays attention to and or pays a premium for what you're doing and your mission in terms of the sustainability component? Do people care?
So I think people care more about a lifestyle product. If it's something that they want to be a part of, whether it's the look and feel, the aesthetic, if we're a coffee shop, which we're opening in a few months, which we can talk about. I think people first connect to that. And then things like organic, sustainable, all these checkbox things, it makes maybe the consumer feel good that they did something, they paid, they did something good by spending their money on a product that is going to a good cause, or it's part of a better purpose. For us, I don't care about that. We're not buying Rainforest Alliance coffees or creating sustainability because I care about what the customer thinks. And that's the difference with our company. We do it because we want to create sustainability on our farms. So we found ways on our own, not by following trends and what everybody else was doing, by experimenting, doing stupid shit. I would love going to our coffee farms and just eating the fruit off the coffee tree. So now Cascara, the Bossie, all these coffee roasters they're serving up this shitty product in a bottle, and let's call it how it is. and it's not drinkable. And like, yeah, you can get a consumer that's going to be like, you know what, I'm gonna buy a bottle of Cascara. I'm gonna try it once. If they don't love it, they don't connect to it, they're not gonna repeat, right?
Tell
They're
me
not gonna
what
come back.
cascara
So
is.
for us,
What is cascara?
yes. So coffee's a cherry. The pit is the coffee bean, right? The cascara is the mucilage. It sounds gross, but it's the fruit around the bean, right? It's the fruit and the skin. And so we dry it, like either on raised beds or dehydrators, like a raisin. And there's a little bit less moisture content than a raisin, of course. And so what had happened over the past few years is roasters have gone on the bandwagon, and now they steep it like a tea, and it tastes like shit. But I held off from doing it for like 2 years because I'm like, we're not jumping on a bandwagon. But in Bolivia, we have this one farm that's way high up in the Andes Mountains. It's like cold at night, really cold. And so with that, the sugars, just like wine, coffee's just like wine. The sugars don't break down. They don't, they stay super sweet. And we use a very specific, we use a geisha coffee, which it's very hard to grow. Not a lot of it grows, but it has a high Brix level, a high sugar level. And we use that one specific cascara to make our product. And we don't even just make like a cascara tea. We actually make a sparkling fizz beverage out of it, sort of like the San Pellegrinos. So it's really nice. And it's like, people love it. It has a hibiscus characteristic to it. And it was based off of all ingredients that come from our farms down in Central America. And it's a product that we love. We have it on tap at a lot of our institutional clients like Facebook. Guys over at Vayner will be getting it. And it's a delicious product, and it's something that people will want to come back to. It's something that when people make cocktails, they'll want to put it with their tequila. Like there's multiple uses for it, and it's really good, and it's great. And so from there, we took the husks. So around the coffee bean, there's a little shell, and we made a ginger fizz out of it. So honestly, it tastes like a ginger beer, but it has a cause, right? And the cause is creating a second revenue stream. The cascara is a third revenue stream. And now we're in the process of also playing with the actual leaves of the coffee tree to make a tea product out of that. So we've created 4 revenue streams. And we also use the flower. So like any fruiting trees, like when the coffee trees flower, it smells like jasmine, like orange blossoms. It's amazing. So the first time I went to Bolivia, I get altitude sickness. So our coffee producer put it in my coca tea. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? It tastes awesome. Like, it's totally different. And I was like, no, we need to bottle this stuff. So I'm like, can you harvest this stuff? And so they have a 2-week window out of the year where they can harvest this flower. And they ship us about like 200 pounds of it a year. And we will soon have 5 products. Right now we have 4 products, and it's cool. And that's creating sustainability.
That is so fucking awesome, dude. That is so awesome that you have now literally taken, like, you in my world, right? It's like nose to tail cooking, right? Like nose to toes. You use every piece of part of the animal you can possibly imagine so that nothing goes to waste. The bones, everything. And you've
100%.
essentially created that style of or that philosophy with the coffee plant. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. And, there's things that we won't tout that we're sustainable on. Like everybody's buying these sustainable roasters that circulate the heat and stuff like that. And it's one of the things that was a hard no for me. I'm like, fuck no, we're going to buy one of these like German tanks, like built in 1952. I sourced it out of a warehouse in Warsaw, Poland. And we've remanufactured and engineered it, sent it back. Yeah, the thing isn't the most isn't the most efficient roaster, but it's like you get this flavor that's coffee, and it is like any other thing. And people don't use them because they're like bombs. If you don't constantly clean them out, they go up in flames. Like, so we very much instructed our team how to use it properly. Peter Turso, like I said, who is our research and development, he's our actual roast master. There's no automation on our roaster, none of that bullshit that you see at every roaster in Brooklyn. And it's fucking cool, man. Like, it's...
I love the fact that you've really sort of created an opportunity, not only for your company, but like, I can only imagine that the farmers themselves are kind of like, wow, this guy is super forward thinking. He's literally taking every piece of the puzzle that we would typically probably just waste and not really think much about. So you've got the bean itself, you've got the husk around the bean, you've got the fruit around the husk, you've got the leaves, and the flower. And these guys are now able to sell to you a lot more than just the coffee beans, which is so that little piece right there is the mind of an entrepreneur, figuring out a way to really make something out of nothing, or make $1 out of 15 cents, lemon out of lemonade. You know what I mean? Or lemonade out of lemons. I mean, I think that is truly it, right? It's about making and doing. And that's incredible. I have a few questions because I think a lot of people, well, I know a lot of people drink coffee. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's probably you probably know what percentage of human beings on the planet that have access to it drink coffee on a daily basis. Just drink coffee and see things like light roast, medium roast, dark roast, single origin, things like that, but have no idea what they mean. So I just have a couple of like coffee specific questions just to give the people listening maybe a little education. What does single origin mean?
So single origin is just from one particular country. So origin would be Guatemala or Costa Rica. If you're in Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Honduras, Burundi.
And light roast compared to medium roast and dark roast.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that we would get beyond that in our industry at this point. I mean, it goes like this. We take every single coffee when we get it, and we roast it probably 20, 30 different ways, and we see what flavors are exhibited at which profile, and we pick which profile exudes the best or exhibits the best flavor profile for our needs. And so I don't think in today's era, if you're dealing with really good coffee, there is some truth to where dark roast coffee does destroy a coffee's flavor compounds, but there are some coffees that are really nice in a medium dark profile. Like our Peru, our cold brew is very different from a lot of the cold brews out there. It has sort of this like meaty, smoky characteristic to it, but it's still clean. And we made a firm decision to go in that and with that direction for that cold brew because it tastes awesome. So typically, I would say most coffees fall between like our coffees between like a darker light roast and a medium roast.
What is the difference between light, medium, and dark in terms of just like the basics?
Yeah. So basically coffee is sugar, right? So you think about when you're making caramel, right? You cook the sugar down, the white sugar down, and as you get it more, as the caramelization starts to happen, as the sugars break down, you start to get this more dimensional sweetness, and then that sweetness becomes charred, right? So if you can imagine, the level of darkness in caramel, like you can get to a level where the caramelization really has taken place, but it's really nice and complex and it's rounded. So when you start roasting coffee and it's in its green form, you get to this level where the sugars just start to caramelize, but there might be underdevelopment, and the underdevelopment might be in the form of like a grassiness or an unwanted characteristic, an underdeveloped flavor. And also the acidity level might be so high that it is undesirable. So at Afficianado, we really go for sweetness. Like that's always our coffees. We like to let our coffees have expression of their own, but sweetness is really our most important thing. And that's falls in a medium roast.
Medium to dark roast. Got it. And there's also, this, whether it's a myth or not, I don't know because I'm actually not in the coffee business, but the lighter the roast, the more caffeine, and the darker the roast, the less caffeine?
Correct. You cook out the caffeine, the darker you go.
Got it.
So correction, we don't tether to the darker side. When I say medium darker roast, our in retrospect, our coffees are still pretty light in the industry. I'll use a company that I've actually really appreciated over the years, Intelligentsia. They've always had a very light profile, and their coffees have always been really nice. But for us, we didn't come into this game from the standpoint of we're coffee shop operators. We went into it from a wholesale perspective, right? So we were selling to restaurants. We needed one coffee. Like think about when you go to a restaurant. It's like, here's 50 bottles of wine or 100 bottles of wine to pick from, right? You have options. Coffee, you don't. And so I won't name it, but there's a hotel very well known in Flatiron that works with one of our competitors. And for years, they no longer do, but for years they would get complaints because international guests want a product that, strikes the masses. And for them, these high acidity coffees don't work. So for us, we've always, because of our wholesale network, we've always went towards just a well-rounded, well-balanced coffee that would appease the mass population.
Got it. I'm a huge coffee fan, massive. I will say that your cold brew coffee is delicious, and honestly, it's like fucking rocket fuel. I mean, it definitely gives you a kick in the ass. So it's awesome stuff. For years, I'm obsessed with espresso. I worked in an Italian restaurant in the East Village called Frank Restaurant. Frank only would use Italian coffee. He would not use really any other coffee. And I know that like Italy is definitely known for pulling great espressos, but not known for like growing the best coffee in the world, right? Like I don't even think they do grow great coffee in Italy. But I just remember being very obsessed with sort of like pulling a great espresso. And there was a little coffee shop, tiny little coffee shop in the East Village called Abbraccio. I don't know if you ever went there.
Of course.
Yeah. So Abbraccio was by far and away my favorite place to go for coffee. Tiny little place, really amazing vibes. But they pulled the best espresso I've ever had probably in my life, especially, I forgot his name, but the guy who owned Abbraccio, he was just in there, always listening to great music, and then they would pull these espressos. And what I noticed about that espresso every single time was there's such a thin line you walk balance-wise for espresso, because it could really, depending on how many grams of coffee, the actual the coarseness of the grind, it's so difficult to pull a great espresso. But they pulled it every time, amazing. When you get a great espresso, it is sweet naturally. It's not bitter. Or maybe there's a little bit of a bitter sort of, aftertaste, or the notes are bitter towards the end of the palate. But really, the initial flavor profile of a great espresso is sweet, and there's no sugar involved. What can you attribute that to?
Yeah, so I think that it's, first off, there's a lot of trends that exist today that I don't agree with. We talked about single origin. I'm actually a very big fan of blended coffees. Now, there's the old misconception that blended coffees are done because you're taking lower quality ingredients with better quality ingredients and balancing it out so you could save money and get more out of what you're working with. But what we've done at Afficianado since day one is we've always created blended coffees that are balanced and work harmoniously with each other. And so our espresso, our Liberator espresso, carries a lot of European roots in that, we ask ourselves, what do we want out of our espresso? And today, with all these single origin, high acidity espressos that just don't make any sense to me at all, we've always stayed true to our more European roots with that. And so we start with a coffee that is a very good base from our farm in Carmo, Brazil. And it gives you the backbone flavors. It gives you the chocolate. It gives you the body, creaminess, right? And then we'll insert or speckle it with a little bit of maybe Ethiopian coffees that have this like golden brown, like nice honeysuckle characteristic just for like the finishing touches. And blending is like an art form in with itself. It's just like roasting, but it's something that a lot of roasters like to put down because it's so time consuming, and it's not something you do once. Like coffee changes flavors as it ages in your warehouse, right? So coffee really only has a lifespan in its green form for like really the longest 1 year, really 8 months. So by the time it lands at your door, like month 2 into it, it's going to change drastically. So if you're not constantly making little tweaks, you're going to wind up with inconsistencies. And that's what has happened to a lot of roasters that have tried to get into blending. You really need to have somebody that's dedicated to the art of it. 100%. It's also fascinating in Italy where you have the same guy that never measures, but he's like this, not even looking at it, but like every single time he pulls a shot, and it's amazing. And so I think, it becomes a natural art for someone.
Yeah. There's lots of places on the planet that grow coffee. Is there a place that you have just have fallen in love with, believe they do the best job, believe that the climate and the terroir is just beyond sort of its competitive regions?
Yeah, so I mean, you're getting more and more traction in Bolivia. I love Bolivia for so many different reasons. It's, if you think of like Machu Picchu now versus what it probably was like back in the 60s, when from a tourism perspective, like you still go into the city of La Paz and there's no Americans there. It's very raw. And the mountainside and the growing region, it's untapped soil. It's insane. Like I've never seen soil so black in my life. And so from that point, everything is just like really amazing there. The terroir is amazing. It is like you're in the rainforest, like it's the jungle. That being said, pre-COVID, our game plan for Afficianado was really to build inroads in Indonesia and also in further exploration in Africa. I have a great working relationship for 6 years now in Ethiopia. Farm is ours exclusively. As a country, like the people in Ethiopia are the most beautiful people. How a country half are Catholic, half are Muslim, but they live harmoniously together is the most beautiful thing when we live in America with so many resources and so many good things, and we're always at each other's throats. It's just like, it's baffling how people there have it so simple, but it's a beautiful life. And so I've reflected so much in my time in Ethiopia. And so I really love Africa. Eastern Africa is a beautiful place.
I've got to ask you a controversial question. Give me your thoughts on Starbucks.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody could put them down. I mean, like I said, they're an amazing company. I mean, they had a mission and they set out to do it. And I think that, you look at companies like La Colombe and they're our biggest competitor. They're way bigger than us, but they had a mission, they achieved it, and they did a really good job with what they have. Do I think their product is good? No. I mean, their cold brew is like a protein shake with a, eyedropper of coffee in it. But, is the packaging beautiful? Have they done an amazing job marketing? Absolutely. Could anyone do it? Absolutely not. They had a knack. I mean, Todd Carmichael is batshit crazy, but he's a really smart guy. And like he had a mission and he achieved his mission. And I don't have anything against La Colombe. I think they've made it really easy for us to be successful because, they control the most of the New York restaurant market. And now as they went off to bigger and better things and, from a money standpoint to their canned beverages, it's allowed us to move in the back door for wholesale and take the next step. So there's always going to be an evolution. And I think when companies evolve, you do switch your customer base, right? So the people that drink Starbucks, it's a different customer base than the people that drink Starbucks back in the late 90s. And I remember this, like it was all the hipsters and what's the word, yuppies that I'm looking for that went to Starbucks. Now nobody would do that, right? Now, so it's the evolution. So I think La Colombe is going to take the next evolution of that. And it's who's coming through the back door. And I think for us, one thing that my team and I have always made a commitment to each other is that since day one, I mean, if you compare us as a company from the standpoint of quality to what we do now, it's a whole nother animal. Every single year, everything that we do, we peel back that onion over and over again. And I always say, what's our mission? How do we get better every single day? If you can look back to tomorrow and say you didn't make a change to progress yourself, whatever it is at Afficianado, leave. And it's always that. So we don't want dead weight. We want people that are going to make everything that we do better, whether it's sustainability, whether it's social alliance and responsibility, whether it's producing better quality coffee or better relationships. And so that's our driver. And
as you walk down that path of trying to making the product a better quality or have more meaning or have more substance outside of just putting coffee in people's cups, do you see a direct result to the top and bottom line at your company?
Yeah, so there's always the ongoing struggle. I don't know if you invest at all. I've always been investing on the side because I love reading about companies. And I really love following Tesla, but I love following Peloton. And so Peloton just announced that they're building a higher end flagship bike and making the flagship bike a little bit less expensive and making a higher end bike. And so what that tells you is that as companies get bandwidth and expand their volume, they're probably getting better pricing from their manufacturers. The same thing happens to us. And the biggest struggles when that happens within a company is that people look at that jar of money and they're like, what's coming my way because of it? And so I think I lead in my organization with this, where it's like, don't put your hand in the cookie jar. Like, where can this be spent best to get us to the next level? So the whole thing for me is long-term, right? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? So the margins are bigger as you scale, but then again, they're not, because a smart businessman and a true entrepreneur is going to keep reinvesting. Mm-hmm. And for me, my biggest goal is, and I say it wholeheartedly, 10 years from now, I don't know what's going to happen with Afficianado, but I have a 5 to 10 year game plan where I want to continue to grow this company organically. So we need as much money to fuel the growth in an organic manner to do that. So our profit margin's bigger, yes, but you're not getting bigger and better without feeding the beast.
Do you believe that it is wise for entrepreneurs, specifically in the founder position, to take money off the table when they have an opportunity to?
Yeah, so it's interesting if you want to talk about COVID, because it brought up a perfect situation. So I've taken side money from COVID, and I made some really smart moves in the past few months. And so I consider that money separate from Afficianado, that I would never take out of it. And I think that if you have the ability to do that, or set an income for yourself and reserve money out of that pool, it's okay to expand. And I think, as you get older, you need to diversify. I mean, I've put my whole life on hold. I've put relationships on hold in my life, like, to focus on Afficianado. I really dedicated my whole life to this company. And so now I'm 38 years old and I'm like, okay, what do I have to show? I have a company, right? COVID definitely showed its way of like shaking up every business, especially ours, right? So with that, I'm starting to game plan other projects. But the cool thing about the projects that I've been dabbling in is, again, subconsciously, what I'm doing with Afficianado, there are members on my team that are going to help build these other projects and make them better. Peter Turso he's cooked at the James Stewart House numerous times. He was one of the best chefs out of New Jersey. He was one of my first clients. He came on to join us, after realizing he never got to spend a lot of time with his family in the kitchen, right? So he wanted a job that, I wouldn't say it's a 9 to 5 because it's not, we work crazy hours, but he gets weekends home with his family. And so he's still a phenomenal chef. He does all of our RTD development with me side by side. And so if we ever did this other project that I was telling you about upstate New York, like, he would have a intricate role in that. And so I think the most important thing about Afficianado is surrounding yourself with people in your organization that you can grow with them, right? Everybody wants to grow together. If you're a CEO and you're not allowing your team to really exponentially grow and seek out their true potential, you're going to either lose them or they're going to give up. So side projects, definitely, I think it's a good thing as long as it falls in line with what you're doing at your core.
If you can give yourself 15 years ago, knowing what you know now, a little advice. So you're 38, so 15 years ago, you'd be 23. What would that piece of advice be?
That's a loaded one. I probably would have started traveling heavier earlier, and I probably would have put my thoughts of having a relationship off a little bit longer. So I probably, rather than dating, I probably would have hyper-focused on my career in my 20s.
Got it.
Only because that's what I know. That's not advice for everybody, but I know it works for me, and I know it gives me my peace of mind to think clear on a day-to-day. Everybody's different.
Adam, this has been an awesome conversation, man. Like I like the fact that like I think coffee is such a cool thing to talk about, and you know, so many people drink coffee, but so few people know anything really about it. So I love the fact that we got your story, an awesome journey through entrepreneurialism. The fact that we were able to get a little education around coffee is super cool. I think that people are going to like be able to walk out of here and say like, I definitely know more about coffee now than ever before by listening to this hour-long podcast. Do you believe you were born with an inherent or innate ability to get to where you're at today, or you were made over time?
Yeah. So, you know, I was reading a while back that children start to develop in the womb. And I do believe that. I believe that, you know, it's a little bit, I was listening to your Gary skit, and I think Gary hit it on the head. It's a little bit of both. For me, I think that it was a lot easier to get started earlier because I had the fundamental building blocks in place in the support system. It could be done by anybody. The only advice I can give to anybody that wants to pursue being an entrepreneurship is the second you tell yourself you want to be an entrepreneur, like, go get a day job. You know, if you're not doing something that you're connected to, that it's not work, right? And you're okay telling your friends, like, I'm fucking broke and like, I'm going to be broke for a while, like, go get a day job. So that's it.
Got it. So you're a little bit of both, which means you're born, because I mean, if you're a little bit of both, but you were born. So you're a borner.
You were born. For sure.
Dude, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Anybody out there who wants to try some new coffee, check out Afficianado. It is really, really good stuff. I have a bunch of it at home that I'm super pumped about. And man, is there one piece of advice that you'd like to leave us with?
I mean, I think for the entrepreneur out there, if anybody tells you it can't be done, you know, the best thing to do sometimes is not be hyper fixated on what everybody else is doing, but do what's true in your heart. And sometimes you'll look up periodically and be like, holy fuck, like, how did I get here? And that's the best thing I can think of. Don't get fixated on what's going out in the outside world, because any of the information you're finding, it's like investing in a stock. Like, if you're reading it, it's old fucking news. So do you, and be true to yourself, and be committed. Be committed to working really hard, and welcome failure.
Welcome failure. I love that. My man, thank you so much.
Michael, so much. I appreciate it. And for anybody, it's Afficianado_coffee on our Instagram. Follow us. I'd appreciate it. Michael, thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, and where can we find you personally?
Yeah, it's just Adam Bossie.
Got it. Awesome, man. Thanks for being on the show. This was incredible, and I cannot wait to share this with our listeners.
See you soon, Michael. Take care.
Man, brother.